text here from Dennis who says, does Rory think it matters what people said when they were at school 50 years ago? Is playground banter just that and not worth people droning on about? Well, that's obviously in relation to Nigel Farage.
Well, I was thinking about this yesterday in the car, and I'm not a fan of Nigel Farage, but I also think that we need to be a little bit more. It's going to get me in trouble, right? But I think we need to be a bit more self-aware, and sometimes I might even say a bit more forgiving as a society. We're very, very judgmental, and I wonder whether everybody who is attacking him is as confident that they were perfectly behaved when they were 17 or 18. That they didn't do things as teenagers which they would be ashamed.
He was 13 when he's accused of saying these
13,
things.
Right, which you'd be ashamed of today. And it's perfectly possible that he was an unpleasant schoolboy and that he bullied people and that he did those things. But I don't think that that is the thing that you judge somebody who's now, whatever it is, 50 years older on. I want to attack Nigel Farage on his views, his catastrophic decision on Brexit. I want to attack him on his lack of serious on economics. I want to say he's not fit to be Prime Minister, but I don't want to make this an argument about what you did in your teens, because I think one of the problems for being in your teens today, let alone Nigel Farage, you talk to teenagers, people in their early 20s, and they're haunted by stuff they've said on social media, recorded in videos, feel their whole lives are being surveilled and wrecked. We need to be able to accept that people have flaws, they make mistakes, and they can be forgiven.
What's the chances of having socialism coming back in this modern-day capitalist society? Is there any room for it? And if so, can you show us some examples of how you think it can work? Because obviously this government doesn't seem to have a clue of how to do it.
Well, I think if you wanted to go for a genuinely socialist system of the sort that Zack Polanski, for example, has been talking about, or some of the other economists around him, you would have to change the way not just the British economy worked, but the way the world economy works. I mean, the kind of ideas going on about full nationalisation or changing the way in which government pays interest on its gilts would essentially involve capital controls. You'd have to move away from a world in which you were relying on investors from abroad to come in and invest in our country and bring in money and take it out, into a British economy which was much more isolated from the world. And the result of that, I'm afraid, but maybe this is just me as a unimaginative centre-right person, would be that we would sadly end up becoming much poorer. We wouldn't have the kind of economic growth that we've come to depend on. So, but am I picking up, Monash, that you are a fervent socialist and that you're frustrated by the lack of left-wing action? In which case, Zack Polanski's your man.
No, not at all. I would say I was a staunch Labour supporter up until when COVID happened, and then everything turned around, and then I became a bit more conservative. And it's just like when things didn't happen under the Conservatives, I thought Labour had a point here, and it's like now it's a crisscross. And I'm just wondering that maybe we should have a cross-party conversation somewhere where instead of having short-termism, where people just elect to do something for the next 5 years at the expense of what's happening at a loss for the next 20 years, maybe that's, in my opinion, I think that's where we're going wrong.
Monash, I think the key example to this, which is worth really pushing and campaigning for, is around adult social care. We built a National Health Service. We never worked out how to really provide decent support for the frail and poorer elderly in our society. And that's something that would need money. It would need cross-party consensus. It would need a 10, 20-year plan. And I think that's exactly the kind of thing we should be doing cross-party.
But we were doing it in about 2009 and nothing happened.
Also, Theresa May, bless her, tried to bring through policies on adult social care, which were then torpedoed by Jeremy Corbyn.
Well, yeah, she didn't. Wasn't that what she brought up during the election campaign? Yeah, and none of her own supporters knew that she was about
That's
to
the
do
one.
it. Yes, Monash, thank you. Hassan's in Westminster. Hello, Hassan.
Yeah, hello. Hi, Manish sort of stole some of my thunder, but I guess the question is, would Zack Polanski and the Greens be able to move the pendulum back towards the left because it has swung so much to the right? And some of the proposals that they're talking about, like sort of increasing capital gains tax, equalizing dividend income, etc., should not really be portrayed as a second coming of communism. They're just a tiny shift towards of the pendulum towards the working people of this country.
Well, Hassan, I mean, this is the big question in politics, and I'm very pleased you've raised it, and it's what people are going to have to think about when they vote. Fundamentally, the question is, what are you interested in? Are you interested in trying to get as much growth as possible? In which case, I'm afraid you need a country which is friendly towards business, towards people making money, to entrepreneurs. Or is your main objective to try to narrow inequality and transfer more money? And then the question is, how are you going to pay for it all? I mean, it's such a difficult debate, this, but the truth of the matter is that so many of the most successful, wealthy businesses in this country can leave. So many of the wealthiest people in this country can leave. And we will not get the dynamism, the entrepreneurism and the investment if what we keep doing is thinking how to squeeze more and more money out of them. At the moment in this country, the top 10% pay 60% of the income tax. The top 1% in the country contribute almost 30% of the income tax. The top 0.1% are contributing 5-6% of the entire income tax of the country. So we're already in a system where the wealthiest people in the country are paying a very, very disproportionate amount of the tax. Most people in the country are paying less in tax than they're getting in services from education or health. And if you keep putting the pressure on the rich, it's going to be very difficult to have a growing economy.
Because a lot of people seem to just shrug their shoulders and say, oh, well, if these people want to leave, let them. They call themselves patriots, but they're not being patriots because they're leaving. But there's a survey out today showing 1 in 10 British people are thinking of leaving the country.
And a lot of young people. Here's another problem. 18 to 30-year-olds, something like over 20% are considering emigrating. This is not a good sign. And why are they thinking of leaving? It's not because of inequality. It's because there are more opportunities in Australia or America to be free and to be entrepreneurs.
Hassan, thank you. Daniel is in Preston. Daniel, go ahead.
Hello, Iain. Hello, Rory. I'd like to ask what you think of the narrative that both Labour and Conservative recently have with demonising disabled people. I was a Conservative councillor up until 2023, and they've just so disenfranchised me, both parties. I'm not happy.
I'm sorry to hear that. Listen, I think one of the saddest and stupidest and most awful thing in politics is when we start demonising anybody from any group. Disabled people, increasingly Muslims are getting demonised. This is a society in which we are founded on the dignity of people, on people's rights, their equality. And yes, of course, we have problems with our finances. It's going to be difficult to pay for all the things that we want to pay for unless we can grow our economy. But that is no reason not to treat people with dignity and respect.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Right, this is probably the final call from Ravi in Isleworth. Hello, Ravi.
Hello, Rory. You are my hero, my friend. Rory, would you agree with me that whatever Trump says, I think it's just laughable? I've just seen the news conference in New Delhi. Putin and Modi have had a very good conversation, and they're continuing to buy oil. And whatever these sanctions happening in Europe, it's just a waste of time, because the Russians are enjoying holidays in Dubai, in India, and in Sri Lanka. How would he tackle the next move forward in terms of solving the war? Because Trump's a failure, we all know that. Well, he's a laughingstock.
Well, I think the key is that the only hope for the United States is to rebuild its allies. And the problem is that Trump has terrified and alienated Europe, the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, South Korea. and India, right? So how is he supposed to contain Russia, let alone China, if he's doing it by making the people that should be America's closest allies and friends and have been for 70, 80 years feel as though he's trying to exploit them, steal money from them, put tariffs on them, undermine their own electoral systems, champion fascists in their countries. So it all goes back to rebuilding alliances, rebuilding a world order. And that's where Trump has been so devastating, because it's going to be very difficult for a future American president to rebuild those alliances, to rebuild the trust. Once people have seen this, they're thinking, I'm not so sure I want to let America get quite so close to my economy again.